energy to spreading the names and faces of the perpetrators of these crimes. It used to be that committing a spree shooting of some sort would get your face all over the news for weeks or months. You get tons of examination of your life and your background and your parents and your friends and all this stuff, academic papers, interviews in prison, whole documentaries, etc. Now you're lucky if your incident stays in the news cycle for more than 48 hours, and the media will rarely say your name on TV. But what if you kill or attempt to kill someone famous? Then they can't ignore you. Literally the same day Charlie Kirk was killed, there was a spree shooter by a kid obsessed with Hitler and Nazis in a whole other state. But he didn't kill Charlie Kirk, so none of us remember this. Consider how much more famous Matthew Crooks would have been if he had actually killed Donald Trump. Further, look at his very similar background to Robinson. Quiet kid, highly intelligent, highly online. All the usual features, but at some point Crooks knew that he wanted to do some type of spectacle act of violence, and he researched spree shooting and other things extensively before deciding to kill Donald Trump. But he failed, and instead his attempt became fuel for Trump's presidential campaign, and his story has been mostly pushed to the side. But understand, targeting famous public figures for infamy isn't a new thing, and it's probably going to make a strong comeback because this is what disaffected, mostly white men have been doing for years. When you look at Ronald Reagan or Bjork or the murder of John Lennon, they all have the same similarities. My goal in bringing up spree shootings is to beg an obvious question. Why is this something that Americans have just allowed to happen here in America? No other country in the world, even countries with plenty of guns like Canada, has this many acts of senseless violence. But more interestingly, why do we not engage with the uniquely white nature of this phenomenon? Not just the fact that the shooters are predominantly white, but also the fact that the victims are predominantly white. Of all the inherent paradoxes in the modern American right wing, none to me are more striking than the fact that 20 white kids dying at an elementary school, or a high school, or an all-white church, or an all-white country music concert would bear minimal energy or attention in the alleged pro-life conservative agenda. Instead of outrage and self-reflection, the right has only doubled, tripled, and quadrupled down, with Kirk being one of the main people defending guns and gun culture and distracting from any real efforts to look inward. Him being murdered in a similar act in the middle of dodging questions on the nature of these acts is so ironic that it feels like something from a movie. Charlie Kirk's murder is yet another cry for attention from white men who are suffering under late-stage capitalism and alienation. But at this point, it's clear that the excesses of white death in this country is not a glitch, it's a feature. It's the entire point, and that's why Kirk has to be celebrated and elevated to such a high level, because he was a true believer turned public martyr. And other white men like him will be lucky to share his fate. But the reality is, most of the other deaths in the name of this cult don't have nearly the same level of exaltation.
Obviously, that's not what either of us are saying.
Well, what do you think is the cause of it? Like, what do you think is the reason why more men aren't succeeding and getting college degrees, and more men aren't going out and making as much money in their 20s?
I think that the current environment does not necessarily lend itself to the disposition that men have got. So they're less conscientious than women from a personality standpoint on average. That means that it's really difficult, comparatively, on average, for you to be able to remind yourself that you need to do this sort of homework. Men are more predisposed to addiction, they're more predisposed to using recreational drugs, they're more predisposed to being in jail, to all of this sort of gang stuff that people get drawn into. It's just more likely for guys. There are more routes that men can be pulled away.
People on the right say pretty consistently that the left offers no answers to young men. The phrase is often, the left has failed men. And I get why they say this. It's stupid, but I get what they're trying to get at. They're getting at the fact that the left offers men no easy answers for the specific things they believe are causing them problems. Instead, the left, because we're talking about a very nebulous thing, right, offers young men a relatively unproven and risky way of reimagining themselves as men, which is in many ways antithetical to the way they have been taught to think a man should be. They are literally telling them the thing that they're actually pursuing is the problem in the first place. So of course, how could that be an easy or viable answer from that particular standpoint? Mind you, there's no shortage of left-leaning men that exhibit the traits we often associate with traditional masculinity and manhood, whether it be physical prowess, desirability, wealth, being a solid father figure or provider, and in plenty of cases, being a misogynist or patriarch. None of these things are unique to the right. Further, if you look at a lot of modern right-wing male figures, they come up pretty fucking short in their performance of masculinity, whether it be Ben Shapiro's clear low T count or the fact that many right-wing men like Kanye West or Steven Crowder can't keep their women or don't take care of their kids. But the right has the advantage in branding, not in truth. And so because they can frame their false images of masculinity as the appropriate ones, it's an uphill battle for anyone outside of that. The right's image of masculinity is based in dominance, and the left's isn't. To the right, as long as a man aspires to or exhibits traits of dominance, then he's okay in their eyes. And while, again, these problems do exist with men on the left, we're not branding ourselves as such, and that limits our reach. Conversely, the right tells young men and boys that they can be a dominant alpha male as long as they follow them on Instagram and buy their vitamins and do this workout plan, as well as this 11-step course to becoming a millionaire before the age of 30. And none of it works, of course. The irony, the immense irony of the left has failed men is that the right has always failed men. The right has been in control of what men say they're trying to be for generations. And why are we where we are today, if not for the false things they've been selling y'all?
Algorithmically generated content on social media contributes to and profits from young men's growing social isolation, boredom, and ignorance, with the deepest pocketed firms on the planet trying to convince young men that they can have a reasonable facsimile of life on a screen. Many grow up without acquiring the skills to build social capital or create wealth. The statistics are insane. Like 45% of men 18 to 25 have never approached a woman in person.
But you could largely describe America right now as a giant bet on AI. 10 companies have driven all the growth in GDP, are responsible for 77% of the earnings growth. Our economy literally rests on 10 companies now, often referred to as the Magnificent 10. And they do several things, but quite frankly, they're in the business of enragement, polarization, and then sequestering young people from all other activities. Now, of trying to establish a romantic partnership when you have literally lifelike synthetic porn. So what are we doing? I think we have our economy is attached to one objective, and that is to evolve a new species of asocial, asexual males. Unintentionally, we have an economic interest, right now I would argue, in planning our own extinction.
It's not controversial to say that modern men are in a state of crisis, but that crisis is very much man-made. And by man-made, I mean capitalism, of course. I hear Tucker Carlson's worried about T levels, and he's right. There's substantial evidence that men have less testosterone today than they did a generation ago. Is it due to cultural degeneration or trans women, or the fact that corporations have been allowed to feed us microplastics for most of the last 50 years? Men are getting married less and are less likely to head a household. Is this because feminism has made women more masculine, or because neoliberalism has made it impossible to support a family on a normal job? Is it because capitalism incentivizes employers to pay people less and less to work them more and more, and the right constantly fights against raising the taxes on the wealthy who are in control of that equation? Let alone raising the minimum wage or paying for health care, maternity leave. Who would want to get married under any circumstances when it's two people just struggling together? Everything about modern men and modern society is a direct reflection of the failures of modern capitalism, but the right refuses to acknowledge this to the detriment of its own followers. The most damning statistic of the dysfunction amongst white men specifically can be found in the suicide rate. While so many white supremacists like to talk about 1350, the distorted data point that says African Americans make up 13% of the population and 50% of the crime, which is a willful misrepresentation of FBI data that we all should know by now. I've talked about it before. I'm not getting back into it. But what about 3070? Y'all ever hear that one? That represents the percentage of white men in this country and the percentage of suicides that they represent. Yes, white men are 30% of the population and represent a whopping 70